Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today in your busy afternoon. I'm quite excited to be here with all of you guys. A little bit of the agenda for today. So today you'll hear from our artist Patty, I almost said Patty, Grant McConnell and Marcia Lea had to talk with Patty today, and you've been in top of my mind since. And so we'll hear some from our artists on different topic on how they went about building their career, their digital presence, managing their copyright, or simply bringing efficiencies to managing their business as an artist. You'll have a demo of Imprimo to see how to set up your profile for success. You're going to hear from Copyright Visual Arts on the service that they offers and the benefit that they have for their members. And then at the end, we'll have a period to answer all of your questions. So with that, we'll get started. I'd like to take a minute to explain to everybody what is Imprimo, how does it work? I'll go into more details later, but I think it's important to talk about it. And more importantly, what we have today and what's coming in the future. So when we started the process with Imprimo, we interviewed hundreds of artists and galleries and art lovers and so on. And we realized a few things. We realized that there's many platforms out there that are built to sell, but there's not very many platform out there that allows you to get to know the artist, what we call social discovery, to get to know them over time, learn more about their art, learn more about them. And that's the platform we wanted to build. So we looked at this, we saw that there was a need to build connection, to display your artwork professionally, and also to be able to interact with other members of the art ecosystem, whether they're galleries, marketplaces, or art lovers. So that looked a lot to us like LinkedIn, that what LinkedIn has built for the business world, but unfortunately that doesn't seem to work too well for the visual arts, giving that they don't actually have jobs and titles, more exhibition works and mentorship, publication, and so on. So we wanted to create something that gives the same benefit for the visual art community as LinkedIn has given for the business community. And that's how we came up with Imprimo. Today we have Imprimo 1.0, which is where the artists come, create a profile, a digital destination, tell us about their career, to have their CV, organize their collection, and so on. That's Imprimo 1.0. Imprimo 2.0 will have galleries and marketplaces that will be joining, which will give the ability to connect with galleries, interact with them. You'll be able to discover you over time, and you'll be able to sell your work through Imprimo by coordinating it. What does that mean is you'll have a button that says buy now, but you're not going to buy through Imprimo. You're going to be redirected either to a gallery you're working with, to your personal website, or to a marketplace. So some of the changes that are coming, and eventually we'll have the art lovers coming on, which will give you the ability to follow the artist, follow the artwork, will generate notifications, and have a very similar interaction as you'd have on some other platform. So today we're at version 1.0. I'll tell you a little bit more about what's to come as we go. But I think it's important as we talk about the platform to realize that this is very much phase one of a very long and exciting roadmap. And with that, I would like to welcome Marcia Lea to tell us a little bit more about copyright visual art before we dive into our presentation. Marcia, we can't hear you, so I think you might be on mute. Marcia, are you there?
She's unmuted herself, but we still can't hear her.
We cannot hear you, unfortunately. We cannot hear you. You want to try to exit and maybe come back again? Yeah, that'll work. Beauty of technology. All right, we'll give Marcia a few minutes to come back and try to see if her microphone can work.
There's also an unmute button on the lower left.
Yeah, she was
The
not
screen.
muted. We just couldn't hear her for some reason. But hopefully it's gonna work this time. Marcia, can you hear us now? We still can't hear you. Well, you try to unplug in your headphone. Maybe that would work. Maybe that's some of the issue.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. There we go.
Okay. I may not be able to hear you, but as long as you can hear me.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
Oh yeah. So far. Perfect. Great.
What's a Zoom meeting without a technical difficulty?
You would lose all the fun.
Yeah. I'm glad to be here speaking with you. I know some of you are members of Copyright Visual Arts already, but for those of you who aren't, I can explain who we are. We're the Canadian Copyright Collective for Visual Arts, and we represent our members' copyrights. We negotiate licenses for exhibitions, reproduction, projection, all sorts of uses of the artwork. And it doesn't cost anything to join. We negotiate the fees with the users. For instance, if a gallery wants to do a reproduction of one of your images, we base our rates on CARFAC RAAV minimum fee schedule. We also add an administration fee on top of that that covers our administration costs. So that's why we can have free membership for artists. And we have sister societies, other copyright collectives in other countries will represent our artists. So for instance, if a movie theater or some use in France wants to use your work, if you're a member of our Copyright Visual Arts, we can have the Copyright Collective in France negotiate the money, the fee to be paid to you. It's sent to us and then we send it on to you. So it saves artists a lot of work. Some of these licenses for reproduction might be $30, or some uses might be several thousand, but at least we have the fee schedule, we can do the negotiations. And we find a lot of artists join because it's sometimes easier to have an organization that represents thousands of artists and works with a professional fee schedule to ask for these rates. Some artists are not comfortable negotiating these rates themselves. The gallery might say, we don't normally pay that, and they feel pressured into accepting, writing contracts to say that the reproductions will be for free. It's a lot easier for us as a professional organization to ask those fees and to explain why it's right to pay the artist. And later on, if you have any questions afterwards, if there's a question period, I'm happy to answer more questions about our organization as well.
Thank you so much, Marcia. And with that, we'll get started with the most important part of our event, which is our artist panel. Quite excited to have Marcia and Grant here today. So Grant, why don't you take it on and tell us a little bit more about yourself? And while you're doing that, I will share your profile on Imprimo and show a little bit more so you guys can have an idea what Grant works looks like.
Super. Thanks, JD. Thanks for inviting me today. Great to be here with you. And just right off the bat, as much as I will, and I suspect Marcia will be talking about our own practices, no two artists have the same practice. The great thing about some of the things that are happening with Imprimo and that I'm liking is that it's really flexible, becoming more flexible, meaning that I can put it to work for how I'd like to put it to work, which is what I'm really liking. I work as a visual artist. I've taught at the university. I teach art history and studio at the University of Saskatchewan, and an affiliated college have for many years. Been involved with organizations like Access and CARFAC for many years. Really important for us, I think, to join together and support each other. And again, that's also why I like Imprimo, because we kind of own the house, so to speak, if you can say it like that, and we have a say in how it develops moving forward. As an artist, it's really important for me increasing. I live in Saskatoon, and I travel, but again, it's a pretty darn big country, and I don't get out as much as I would like to into other communities for exhibition or for communicating with other artists. So increasingly, I think it's really important to have the tools to get the work out there, and something that looks good, clean lines, fine presentation, and it brings together a lot of the things that I've really been looking for with Imprimo in terms of some kind of an online presence. like most artists, like many of you, if not most of you, I think we've had, ups and downs with the online world, and what I've been involved with the development to some degree with Imprimo, and what I speak to is the necessity to have, something that we can trust, something that works, something that's efficient moving forward, and that's really what I'm trying to work through with the developers, terrific people that are working behind the scenes for us. Thank goodness for that. And I know how much this is going to serve me going down the road.
Amazing. Marcia, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit more about yourself, your career as an artist, and I will share your profile while you talk. Oh, now we can't hear you again. Now you're on mute. There you go.
Well, I started studying at York University in Toronto, and I finished my fine arts degree at the University of Ottawa. But I also recently did a master's degree at the University of Ottawa, which was a wonderful growing experience, Master's of Fine Arts. And over the year, I worked primarily in watercolor and acrylic and installation. And the subject matter that I'm exploring with my practice has evolved over the years, from things such as lighting to the Cold War to gender roles. And now I'm working on a series called The Journey. And this painting that JD has put up is actually a painting from 1990. So my career has rather gone in a circle, and I'm revisiting some of the subject matter that I dealt with at the early part of my career. And it's now not so much about lighting as about the journey, the anticipation of a journey, the actual experience of the journey, and the memory of the journey that is what we actually live with for the rest of our life. But it's a rich subject matter that can be interpreted many ways. So obviously it can be the journey of life as well as we evolve. And so I haven't put my new paintings up. I would like to exhibit them first, but I think this is a telling painting that gives you some of the idea of the symbolism of travel and the things I'm working with. I'm also obviously executive director of Copyright Visual Arts, and like Grant, I have a long association with CARFAC, and also I'm on the board of directors of Access Copyright, because I too feel that being involved in these organizations where we can all work together to improve things for the visual arts in Canada is important. And I think Imprimo is a big step towards that.
Thank you. And with that, we'll dive into our questions. So I know the two of you have been making art for a long time. We just find out that you've been doing it for at least till 1990, Marcia. So how do you go about staying organized with all the work that was produced over that period of time?
How do we what?
Stay organized. How do you go about staying organized? Which seems to be a challenge for not every artist, but we've heard from many artists that, staying organized certainly presents a set of challenges.
And it's taken adaptation as technology changes and as we store information in different ways, particularly visual arts images. It has taken adaptation from slides to prints to CDs and USBs and clouds. It keeps changing. One thing I find is that gets me through is the old-fashioned combined with the modern digital. I like a print copy of my images because as technology changes, as long as I have a print, I can keep recopying. Mm-hmm. And I like to keep them in a book, and I can record every image I have and where it's shown, who bought it, any bits of history, some of the story. And that's been a valuable resource when I want to upload onto the digital world like Imprimo, that I can look at these records. So the physical and the digital help. Another thing that helps is hiring professionals when they can save you time. Lawyers, accountants help with the organization of some of the business aspects.
And from your perspective, great. Any tips to share on how to stay organized?
And just picking up on a number of things that Marcia's saying too, it's a full agreement, like because we've had to adapt all along. I'd also like to add, like, very important point that Marcia makes. When I send out exhibition packages or promotional packages, I also include hard copy, because people don't necessarily, you might send a USB, but it might stay in the envelope. And if you open up a package and you've got some visuals right there, sometimes old technology is as good as anything. But I think on top of that, as far as staying organized, just I say it like this: start from here. The stuff that you're doing to stay organized is probably not the stuff that you like doing the most. Meaning, you got to get down to work. And what I would say is that for myself, if I just spend 2 or 3 hours a week just doing the crappy stuff that I really don't want to do, I'm probably ahead of the game of probably 80% of the other artists out there. And I think it's important to know that in that respect, what you're actually doing is clearing the decks for your creative practice, right? So if you do that 2 or 3 hours of hard slogging, sitting, organizing files, returning the emails that you said you were going to return, what it's actually doing is clearing your head for when you're in the studio, you're a better artist, and that's why the necessity of this is that you kind of get down to it and actually find the right tools that help get you there too. And as Marcia said, when you need to, hire professionals. When you need to, find the right site, not the wrong site, but the right site that you can work with, or the right tools.
Yep. So we've talked about the physical, keeping physical record and keeping digital ones. So touching on the digital, how important would you guys say is having an online presence, and what would you say has worked or has not worked into having an online presence? Because we've heard from many artists that not everybody choose the same path. There's more than one path to go about this. What would be your experience? Why don't we start with you, Grain? Tell us a little bit more about kind of how you approach this. Some of the challenges you experienced and some of the recommendations that you would give based on that.
Yeah, I think increasingly an online presence is not a question about whether you have it. It's about, I think it really has to do with how extensive it should be, or how much you want it to work for you in terms of marketing or sales component or whatever it is. But I think just given the nature of the art world, and with the internet, we're not going backwards, moving forward. So I'm speaking as an old guy, read my gray hair. That we're moving into the new iteration of the art world, which means an online presence. But and I think the one thing is there have been a lot of missteps with the internet over the last 20 years. We've seen them all. Things go up and they come down, and I think everyone's been through one lame website developer, if not 2 or 3 by now. But I think at the end of the day, it's our job, really, if we're professionals, or to the extent that we're professionals, find the solutions that get our work out of town, so to speak, or in some ways with the online presence, get it out of town, get it across the country, get it out into the world, because we don't know how many people out there have tremendously good taste that are interested in our work. And we want to meet up with those people, whether it's for exhibition purposes, for sales purposes, but just getting it out there means as much as anything, increasingly an online presence.
And what would you say, Marcia? How do you go about your online hosting your online presence?
Well, there's 2 things I would answer. One as an artist and one as executive director of Copyright Visual Arts. And I think it's like Grant says, it is an important aspect of your career in the contemporary world. However, do it properly. Preventing infringement and piracy is very important. We get cases all the time where people's work are being stolen. They contact us. And once your high resolution image is out on the internet and people are stealing it, it's almost impossible to protect it and get it back. So you need to get on the internet, but you need to do it carefully on safe sites and make sure that high resolution images can't be stolen. And not just for what you put on, but your dealer, your gallery. Often it's artists' images are being stolen from their site because the gallery didn't know how to properly protect the images. And So it's very important to do it very carefully and consider what you're doing. You can't take it back. So do it right in the first place. Preventative approach.
Yep. And that leads into my next questions, which is, with the digital world expanding, we've seen more and more piracy, recently with, what can be an amazing technology, the NFTs, but can also, end up being a terrible scenario depending on how it's being used. We've seen an increase in piracy there, but then not only that, we heard from many artists. I saw my work on T-shirts in another country and this and that. So what would you say are some of the practices that artists can take to make their copyright claim more robust?
Me or Grant?
We'll start with you.
Okay. Well, document when you've created it, while you're creating it. Could be a good practice to annually take your images and email them and print them so that you have a date and time, things like that. Even leave them with your lawyer annually. Make sure that things are not high resolution on the internet. Make sure that you have those discussions with your gallery about how they're using the images. And also don't feel pressured by galleries. They often want you to sign an agreement where they can use your images in any way for promotion whatsoever without a fee. Don't feel pressured to sign those. Contact us, we'll help you.
That's some good advice. What would you have to say on Grant? Any additional advice to give on how to make your copyright claim more robust and maybe try to prevent or make it easier to enforce it? And should there be some piracy or misattribution or misuse?
Yeah, misattribution, piracy are they're a part of it that I think more and more as artists, when we talk it through and just say, remind people, and when I talk to artists sometimes in workshops, I'm saying, reminding them that remember, copyright is yours. You don't have to put the little c after your name. You don't have to. It's yours in perpetuity unless you assign it to somebody else. And we have to, as a professional group, remind people of that. That's a big part of it. When it gets onto the internet, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. But the more and more we can talk about, reputable organizations will deal with reputable conduits for that work being, the right image, that you contact the person, pay the fees associated with it. And the other thing is beyond that, I'll add one more thing, which is we're represented by our work on the internet, on the online world. And if it's a poor representation, I just recently saw a reproduction of my work on the internet that was so bad that it didn't look like my work at all. And yet people are seeing this as being my work. So the more you can stream, your online, the world, the way that you work out from the studio into reputable routes that have, refined works, as Marcia's saying, not too high resolution for the purpose of reproduction, but definitely get it out there in a way that you say that's my best foot being put forward in the world with in that respect.
Yep. And I think, a big part of this is making that information easily accessible. I think, when we talk to a lot of people who, maybe not using, images the right way, I think it's fair to acknowledge that I think most people are not trying to do wrong things. They simply don't know any better. They see an image and the extent is, oh, I like this image, I'll use it. They don't really understand that this belongs to somebody. And then, having a source where you can point to say, hey, this belongs to me and here's the evidence that it does. Can be quite valuable, and which kind of leads into my next question. So when we started looking at Imprimo, we saw that there's a lot of marketplaces out there that their goal is to sell the piece, but there wasn't very many platform that allows the artist to tell their artist journey or to tell the story about the work and the inspiration behind it. And even being able to see the provenance, and that's some of the things that we've done on Imprimo. But how important would you say that is sharing the story behind the artwork and the artist? Understanding not everybody is the same, and that might look different from one person to another. But how important is it, and what are some of the things that you think should be included in that story?
If I start off on this one, I think the story part of it's important. I would remind everyone that's listening that, you know, as visual artists, there may be audio components to what we do, but for the most part, I think it's important that the story lead back to the kind of the main thing for us, which is draw people back into the visual. Whenever you hear an author out, you know, talking about their latest book on the radio, about every 3 minutes they say, because the publisher is in the background slapping them to remind them to say, remember, tell them the title of the book, and that's, you know, where you get it, it's 1995. But that's what we should be doing. The story should take you back to the thing that we're there in the first place, which has to do with, you know, the visual arts, and I think that's important. So we dovetail into that, but you have to have the ability to, you know, the websites now, they're not just, you know, cold objective websites. They're actually, there's a social media function, there's a verification tool function, that, you know, QR codes and things we're going to talk about later. And then the story feeds into that. Why do we go to openings? It's because we want to talk to people. We want the story behind the artist, and maybe we want to talk to the artist. So that's the you know, the thing that kind of gets it out of the house, or gets it out of the conventional way of doing things through a website like this. So I think it's the story component, how you want to live. I keep mine pretty brief usually, my outside of it, but some people are, you know, I really like to know what's going on in other artists have.
Yeah. And Marcia, what would you say are some of the things that should be included in that story to really make it engaging, or to really be able to share the emotional connection that you have with that piece?
Well, to me, art is about processing my experience and then expressing it and sharing it in a visual way. But that also leads to a discourse. It's opening a discourse, be it that people respond by words and questions, or they create another work of art in response. But I think Grant's right. Like when you go to an exhibition, as an artist, I love hearing the feedback, and the people attending usually enjoy hearing more information about why you created it and how and what it meant to you. And those are really valuable connections. And I think that's something that visual art can really do. And it's enhanced by the story. And that's why you have artist talks usually at an exhibition. And then the audience can respond as well. So I think if you can start to do that on the website, you're reaching a greater audience as well. And I think you're right that there is a lack of that. You might get it on an artist, their own website, but websites are hard to keep up and take you away from your artwork. And maybe sometimes at a gallery with their artist statement, but I don't think there are a lot of platforms that are really emphasizing the story behind the art.
Yep. So you touched on one thing that I think is important, is a lot of the business management. You know, it really takes a lot of time away from making art, whether that is keeping your CV updated, your website updated, keeping all your stuff organized, and, you know, an archive and so on. So what are some of the tips that you would give to try to like eliminate or streamline some of these processes so that, you know, the artists have more time to do what they like, which is making art? Want to start with that, Marcia?
It's tough. Yeah, I'm classic. I love the best painting time, a creative time I find is the 3 months before my art show. And I want to paint right up till the art show. And sometimes I've literally almost forgotten to get the invitations out because I just want to keep creating. But yeah, updating your mailing list and things like that. I think Grant's suggestion of doing a couple hours a week is the best. Just sit down, do half an hour in the morning before you dive into your studio, instead of those last 3 months before the show, where it's such a rich creative time. But there's a lot of business management that has to be done at that time as well. You've got to invite people to the shows. And the website, quite frankly, in general, that's someplace I often sacrifice. My website is years out of date, my personal website, because that takes time.
We heard that from many people. It is a lot of work, and I think a lot of people get the blank canvas. What do I do now? What do I say? So that's some good points. So what about you, Grain? So you talked to us about having consistency or discipline around doing it on an ongoing basis. Any other advice to give other artists on how to maybe make the business management not as overwhelming as it might be?
I say it like this too. I'm not speaking from a position of great superiority, because very rarely does anyone accuse me of being over organized, right? If you know what I mean. And it just means kind of many of us we choose to go into the fine arts because we're not the best accountants, if you could say it like that. So that means compartmentalize. Just say, okay, hold my nose, here I go. My 2 or 3 hours, I've got a great body of work, and I don't want to have this work sitting around my studio, all this. I want to get it out there, which means I got to get down to the business of organizing a way for it to make it out into the world. And that's just, it's a given. It's part of being an adult. It's doing the stuff you don't want to do necessarily, right? So here we are as visual artists saying it may not be our strength, but we can do it. And again, finding the tools that simplify. You're going to do your taxes, find a software program. You're going to, whatever it is, and find the tools that are there, and don't try and remake it. I don't want to be a specialist in a lot of these things. I don't have time to do it, no interest, but at least I can organize, 1 foot in front of it to get organized enough to get the work out there as in the best possible light, so that people can see my work in the best possible light.
Yep, that makes sense. And I guess we have one last question before we wrap up our conversation. The two of you have been on the platform since the beginning. So why are you on Imprimo? What does it mean to you? How do you see yourself using it? What value does it bring to you in your career? Why don't we start with you, Grant, and then we can finish with Marcia.
Yeah, Imprimo from day one, I really like the shape of this, meaning you can use it. It's a very flexible tool. It's increasingly being built out into what visual artists need, and that is not the same thing as what a corporation thinks that visual artists need. It's a different thing, kind of thing, if you know what I mean. And I think that's why I'm there, is because the 3 parts of this thing, which is the trust verification tool, that increasingly moving forward, I think in the world of the internet is that much more. People are talking about it more. If a company, multi-billion-dollar company doesn't have a phone number that you can call them when you got a problem, should we be dealing with them? And a lot of the contact stuff that you have with Imprimo, the social media side of it, where you can go to a site and see what other people are doing, which was I like that kind of shared platform in a lot of ways. And then increasingly just the nuts and bolts of being able to organize your work, get your video, all your documentation, basically your kind of artistic pedigree into a package that people have access to, clean lines, very professional. It just makes you look good, and that's why I'm there.
Amazing. And what about you, Marcia? What is your takeaway? Why are you using Imprimo? What benefits have you seen so far?
I was just making a list. There's quite a few. One is definitely to replace my website. I find the technology on the website, I learn it, and then I go back a year later and it's changed and it's awkward. It's hard for me to update and so you have to keep teaching yourself the new platform, as opposed to Imprimo, which is designed for us to use it easily, designed for artists. And I can call for advice. There's a tech I can call when I have trouble. I like that the site has many securities, like verifying the ID of the people on. It's a bit of a process when you set up, but it was pretty quick to work through. And I think it will help to remove any bad actors, as they say. Mm-hmm. And I very much like the certificate of creation, that you can verify that it is my work. When I put it on the blockchain, it's documented, and it's on a reputable visual arts site. So that I think is extremely important. And also I love the resume, that when I list my shows, exhibitions. I can actually, say my thesis exhibition from my MFA. I can show pictures. Like you can just click on that. It's not just typed words on a resume. You can click on it and go immediately and see pictures of that exhibition. So this is the site when the next time I'm applying for grants or galleries, it looks so professional. This is the way I would like to present myself to galleries.
We actually heard a few people who said that that's their go-to recently. Actually, it was Nancy last night, Nancy Cole,
Yeah.
from the East Coast. She said that recently she's just been sending her Imprimo profile, and
Yeah.
galleries and grant bodies have actually been accepting it. So she's like, that's so much easier than what she was doing before. So it looks like you guys are sharing opinion on that one. So with that, I want to say a big thank you for you to spend this time with us. We'll have a few questions at the end. I'll give a quick demo right now of how Imprimo works, and how to set up your profile for success, and then we'll take the questions. What are the questions for Grant and Marcia? Grant and Marcia. I get confused with my Patty again. I really want to talk to you, Patty. So Grant and Marcia, and then finally, if you have some questions for us. So again, one big thank you for the two of you to join us today. And with that, I will take you guys on a quick tour of Imprimo. Again, I want to come back to what I said at the beginning and go into more depth, right? So what you're about to see is Imprimo 1.0. And the idea was to be able to replace your website should you want to, be able to enhance your website should you want to, reduce the administrations that comes with updating your CV and some of the other step that comes before or after the sale, and more importantly, be able to display your work in a professional way, in an engaging way, and have it on a platform that has a lot of features in place to protect your rights as a creator. So I'll share with you guys a little bit about the platform, and then we'll take some questions. So this is Imprimo. So this is our homepage. The homepage was built for one purpose. It was to make it easy for art lover to come and discover artists, at a kind of a broad scale. You have the ability to use some filters here. As you can see, you can search, you can filter by categories, you can filter by medium. In this case, I've selected installation. And then as you scroll, it's an infinite scroll. You can scroll as long as you want. You'll see different artwork. And then, one of the things that we've heard from artists is, I see my work. I'd like to be able for people to know who I am, but I don't necessarily want to have my name front and center, every time. So what we've done is when you hover over the picture, the name of the artist, the name of the artwork, the avatar appears. And then when you hover over, it leaves. So it doesn't really compromise the look of the image, but it gives you the information right away. And then you see here, there's a blockchain thumbprint ID. I'll touch on that a little bit more in a second, how it works and so on, but I just wanted to touch on it so you know what is there for. And then when it comes time to searching, you have a few options. You have the magnifying glass in the top corner. So if I click here, I can search, we can search for an artist. In this case, search on Grant. He appears. I can click on it. I can also go and search for different keywords and so on. I have the ability to click on artwork and search for specific artwork. You have the same categories and medium. And then finally, we have the artist. And basically in the artist, you'll see the avatar appear, the name of the artist, the pronoun, and the location. So we heard that, quite loud and clear that art is very local. If you're from Surrey, BC, the likelihood of you buying BC art is much greater than the likelihood of you buying Newfoundland art. And so we really want to give the ability for people to search for maybe art that is more related to their own community. So you have the ability to filter, and the filters are a little bit different. You have the categories, and then you have the locations. So that is for the overall search process. And then when it comes time to look at an artist profile, this is what it looks like. So the first thing you'll notice is that red check mark that appears here, which we've heard from Patty, we heard from Grant, we heard from Marcia, the importance of it. And let me talk to you a little bit about why this is there and what it's for. So when you look at many platforms, I'll use examples. I think it's a lot of them, if not most of, not most of them. There's no verification process in the front end. It's really after the fact. If I go on Instagram, I see, when one of you guys' profile, I could probably take a screenshot and recreate your profile within 5 minutes. And as long as I'm not doing anything funny, it's going to be really hard for you to get my profile down. So we heard that this has been painful. It doesn't happen to everybody, but when it does, it's like the gift that keeps on giving, right? It keeps happening, and it's really, really hard to stop, right? So we wanted to eliminate that completely from artists and not have to live with that, which requires them to verify their ID in the front end. So you have to take a selfie, take a picture of your driver's license. We compare the 2 photos, we compare the 2 names on it, and then we validate. So we know Grant McConnell is who he pretends to be. We verified her ID. He is nobody else but the person that we verified. If Grant decided that he's going to change his name and do all kinds of funny stuff, in the administrative view, we would see that and we would prevent him, right? So this has allowed us to have 0 bad actor on our platform. And should someone do something malicious, we would know immediately and be able to stop it. So that has been the step 1 of, the verification process. And then when you look at the profile, you have the avatar and you have the cover image. So when you create your profile, those are your 2 first things that you want to do. You want to make sure you have a nice avatar, ideally something with a background that it doesn't have too much that's distracting and have clear light. So in this case, very easy to see. Grant, and then you have his favorite artwork. So when it comes to the cover image, the 2 best choices, either what Grant did here and having, one of his favorite artwork, or you can have something like what Marcia did, which is, one sec, a picture of her working in the studio. And I would say what we've heard is that the picture in the studio is what the art lovers likes more. But there's many artists that says, I want my work to do the talking for me. So we're relaying the information. One of the 2 is probably one of the best choice. We've heard a lot that art lover like to see something like this more, but many artists choose to have their favorite artwork. And to be honest, there's a lot of very beautiful profile with this there. So those would be some of the first few things you want to do. The reason why is that what you don't want, and I know these are artists that are new, they just signed up in the last day or so, right? But the avatar up here, and it's empty and it looks like an incompleted profile, and that's not going to generate much interest. So those are some of the first things that you want to do when you create your profile: the avatar and the cover image. Then it brings us to the bottom where you have the ability to add your biography, and then here you have a short biography. In this case, you can see Grant listed us, a little bit of I think that's the default setting that it gives us a bit of detail on him. You could use this as your billboard. I have an exhibition happening on this day. Come check it out. Right? This is the first thing people are going to see. I have a publication coming out on this day. Have a look. This is front and center. You can change that as many times as you want. If I'd be an artist, guaranteed that's where I'd put all my exhibition that's coming, right? People see this the first thing they see, and then they're able to see they're able to know what you're up to and where your artwork is being presented. You can select some keywords, which will allow you to be searched like I showed you a while ago, and you can link your website or a different social media channel, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, your blogs, or in this case, your artist's website. And then here you see make inquiry. So, when you click that, you can see it says contact representative. Very important, especially if you're represented by a gallery. I would highly encourage that if you're represented by a gallery, that in the administrative view, you can make the representative your gallery, right? You don't have to do so. The message can be sent to you, but I would say you might face some resistance from the gallery should they not know about this. So we highly encourage you to have the conversation and put them as the representative, or have the conversation and redirect the messages there. So that's why it says representative there, is because you have the ability to add somebody else than yourself who received those inquiries. So it could be you, it could be your gallery, it could be an art dealer, or so on. You have the ability to decide all that. And that brings us to the next section, which is the CV. So when we did the CV, we heard that many artists had black and white on their website, HTML or PDF or Word document, which probably does the job when it comes time to presenting to galleries or granting bodies. But for an art lover like me, it doesn't mean a whole lot. If I don't know where that gallery is located, I don't know what I'm looking at. So we wanted to create something that was very engaging. And in this case, if you click on the red dot, on the red plus, you can see the artwork record. Grant was able to add some videos and more documentation. Here I can see him presenting in the gallery, and so on. So, in this case, we can see the publication. This has a few things. Makes it quite engaging for the art lovers who's looking on there and looking at these events and being like, wow, this is amazing. I'm learning a lot more about Grant than I would have if I didn't have these additional supporting documents, right? The second thing it does, and I'm going to try to find there's one here that I know I remember seeing. Where did you go? I just saw it right here. You know, it would be very difficult for me to say Grant did not do this exhibition. I can see him in it, you know, with his work. So it really elevate the trust in the provenance event. You know, not only do I get to learn and be excited about this, but it very, you know, it really makes me feel comfortable that what I'm looking is real. This hasn't been made up, right? This information is real. You know, I can see images of it. There's supporting document. In some cases, there's, you know, certificates and so on. So very, very important part. Now, so we've done this. We want to make it more engaging, but another priority was it can't be more work, right? So that was very important. And I'll show you guys in a second on what we've done to try to reduce that as much as possible. So I'm going to go to this artwork. So when we go to the artwork page, before I dive into anything, right, one of the things that are very important is the share button. So when it comes time to sharing online, you know, we would see a lot of people share the image, share a high resolution image. Someone might come, take a screenshot of this, save it, and then use it for their own good, right? You can actually not right click on it on the pictures on Imprimo. So it's not as easy to save it. The thumbprint is here. If you take a screenshot, it will appear on the screenshots. And all the images on Imprimo has been reduced in resolution. So now it's becoming, you know, not so effective as an image to be used giving those things. But that was one part. Now, no, there's, if you want to do wrong, there's always a way around it. But what we wanted to do is to make it easy for artists to share their work. So when you click the share button, if I looked on LinkedIn for a second, and then I share it in a post, I'm sharing this beautiful image that Grant has, right? And it's the same thing as if I uploaded an image. However, when I click on the image, what happened is, oh, I get on the artwork record. And then that way is redirected to Grain, and I get to learn about him. I get to learn about the piece, right? That interaction was very important to us because we're trying to redirect you to a page where people can learn about it and buy it. It's not a dead end where I can see it and then what? How do I go about learning more? You know, depending on where it's being shared. You know, we really want to resend the people right back to your profile so that they can learn more and engage with you. So I would highly encourage when you share on social media to share there. You'll see one of them that's not appearing. It's Instagram. You cannot share from Instagram. That's Instagram permission. Has nothing to do with us. The things that I would say is a lot of artists use either the link tree in their biography or just their link. Depends how many artwork you want to do. But things that we'll do is they'll post the image on Instagram and they'll say, look in my bio for the link to my Imprimo profile. So a lot of people have been doing that. If you want to use Instagram, because a lot of artists are, that's how I would suggest it. You know, Linktree allows you to have multiple different links, right? So you can have all your different artwork record, and then, you know, when you post the image, you refer to that. If you need help with that, send us a message, info@imprimo.ca. We'd be very happy to help you set that up. So now let's get back to the artwork record. So with the artwork record, I'm getting to my blockchain ID here, which is something that we thought was quite important. You know, most, you know, like Grant said, as a creator, once you create a piece of work, you know, you have the rights to it. However, when it comes time to enforcing it, documentation is key, right? And we realized that not very many artists were keeping those records, especially in a way that was easy to be presented as evidence. So what we do, so when you upload your artwork record, we registered the name of the artist, the name of the work, the metadata about the work, the copyright holder and the year it was created, and the person who's made the claim. All that is registered on the blockchain automatically. You have no call to action. As soon as you update your artwork record, that's being sent to the blockchain. So now on one side, we have this, you know, this claim that's been made by this person called Grant McConnell, you know, but no one really knows if he is who he is, you know, and that would be the case if you registered elsewhere on the blockchain. So on one end, we have the claim registered on the blockchain. At the other end, we have Grant, whose ID has been verified on Imprimo, and so we know he is who he pretends to be. And this thing here is the cryptographic signature, and basically what that does, it links what you did on the blockchain to your profile on Imprimo, which means not only did someone call Grant McConnell, but Grant McConnell, whose ID has been verified by Imprimo, made that claim. Now, if you didn't understand what I just said there, you don't need to, because all that's fully automated for you. So we know that many artists will be overwhelmed by some of that technologies and all that, and we want to make it simple, and this is fully automated. So, you know, now I told you how it works. You don't need to remember that. It happens automatically. One thing I'd like to mention is, one thing that we heard from our community is that environment is very important to them, and it is for us too. And there's no reason to hide about this, that blockchain consumes a lot of energy and in some case can be hard on the environment. That mattered to us. So we went and we choose a system that allows to send all of our claims and all of the other people who are using this system's claim all at once. So maybe 10,000 or 100,000 claims get sent at the same time, once or twice a day. And what does that do? It reduces the costs, which would be about $100 a transaction to a penny, right? Or something along those lines. So we don't have to pass that cost to you. The second thing that happened is the energy comes down the same grade. So the amount of energy that's used by Imprimo to register this on the blockchain is about the same as what it takes you to boil a kettle of water over a period of a month, right? So quite minimal. And that was very important to us, and I'm quite excited to share that with you guys. So we'll drop the technology here for a second. I think we talked enough about this. It's fully automated. You don't need to remember this. We took care of that for you. And then this takes me to the creation story. And I think this is, one of my favorite one personally. I get to see Grant created a video. There's different images behind the inspiration. And this part is my favorite. If I had to go and to argue that Grant is the rightful owner of this piece, I'm seeing it, creating it. Either he's creating a reproduction, right? Or he's creating the real deal, because at the end of the day, we know he's there and he's doing it. So, that really adds a ton of strength to the provenance claim that you're making. And more importantly, this is quite exciting for me. I had no idea how those lines was happening here. Now I'm seeing it. So the process of this, I've asked myself that question quite a bit before I saw that image. And now I see, which is, to me, it drives a ton of interest in the work that I'm looking at. So I would say this section here called the process, which is going to change to the creation story or journey, Steven? Creation story?
Creation story.
Yeah, so it's going to change in the next week or so to creation story. When you go into the admin view, it's already called creation. We've changed that to match the two of them. But this is the section that everybody wants to see. Why does this matter to you? How did you go about it? Show us some pictures in progress. You don't want to show pictures in progress? That's fine. But tell us about what that means to you. It drives so much interest in what you're doing when we can relate to the emotions that you had in your piece. So if I can say one thing to remember today, spend some time with the creation. It is really worth it, and it drives a ton of interest. And finally, we get to the artwork timeline. This is the provenance event. We wanted to make it in the open domain so you can come and learn about the story of the work in an engaging way. And once again, with this documentation here, it elevates the trust in what I'm looking at. I know that this was, there wasn't a publication. I can see it. Either Grant is really good at Photoshop or it was actually, in this publication. And I'm pretty sure it is the latter. So this is what the idea here, and more importantly, what we wanted to do is to eliminate the need to update your CV. So when you go on Imprimo and you create an artwork record and you create a timeline event, your CV is updated automatically. And I'll show you guys here, October 2017, the publication. If I go to Grant's CV under publication, October 2017, it's right here. Grant did not have to add this. This happened automatically. So if you work on the artwork record, most of your CV are going to get updated. I'll show you guys the boxes that don't, which is very minimal, right? So if I go into, I can't even see my screen here. So if I go into my artwork, I say my artwork, but artworks because I'm not an artist. But here you see on the CV section, if I go and add the event, you see all these different boxes to add. But when I go into the artwork under timeline, most of them are here. So you want to work from the artwork timeline. That's where you want to work from, and most of it's going to get populated on your CV automatically. You don't have to touch it, right? And I would say that's going to save you a ton of work. Some people are going and they're doing both, and then you actually end up with two entries of the same. So if you wonder why that's happening, that's probably why, right? So I would highly encourage you go to the artwork and then you work along the tabs here. So if I get back to my image for a second, and Marcia talked about this, one of the things that we created was the certificate of creation. And why is that? Is many artists, especially the one that represent themselves, said that the documentation that they send is they send it themselves, right? And they wanted something more professional. As soon as you create your artwork record, this is automatically generated. Nothing for you to do. You just click the button that I did, this appears, and you press print, right? And then when you look at this, we have the name of the piece, the name of the artist, where it was located at, the signature. You don't have to add your signature, but you certainly have the option. The name, again, your name, the date, and then the date of the ID, the date as which the ID was verified. Here you would see the metadata appear. Again, I'm not an artist, so it's not coming up. The date that the claim was made, and then if I would have been an artist and published it, the blockchain ID would appear here. So very, very completed documentation. But my favorite part is the QR code. So let's just give you an example where this adds value. Grant sells the piece to me. I know Grant, I love him, and I like what he's doing. I sell the piece to my cousin. My cousin doesn't know anything about Grant. And actually, matter of fact, it's quite hard to find out about Grant if you don't even know his name, right? So he has the piece, and it's very difficult to know something. So with the QR code, you come and you scan it. The second you scan it, you land on the artwork record. So where this adds a ton of value is when it goes into the secondary market and the piece exchanged from hand to hand, you're able to have a continuous, persistent presence, even as it's exchanged hands. So today, if I go on my timeline, I can't register a sale. That's in the primary market. If a Grant sells a piece to me, he can register a sale. He go here, he writes a sale, and he says, I sold it to private collector. And then he registers the sale. In the future, we will allow for the third party to come and to contribute to the provenance event as it goes in the secondary market. My cousin can come and say, I bought that piece, and it will go and be added there. We're working on this. It's not there yet, but I'm giving you guys a glance at the future where multiple people will be able to come in and contribute to provenance event. When the galleries have profile, they'll be able to say, yes, Grant has exhibited at that gallery on that date and attest to that claim. So this is what we're doing to try to strengthen those provenance claim and make it more engaging. Coming back to my certificate. So I taught on the certificate. Another case that you can do, if you're trying to exhibit, you can send a certificate with the QR code. The gallery can scan the QR code, and they have access to all the information you have on Imprimo. There's absolutely no need for you to send any information as long as you have a detailed artwork record. They should have access to everything they need on Imprimo. And should you make some updates, as soon as they rescan the QR code, they'll get the update. So those were kind of the two main use cases that we had for this. Lastly, we have the QR code. So when it comes to having an exhibition, you probably had this beautiful 5x7 with about 3 lines that says something about your work. And hopefully there's someone there that can tell the rest of the story, but that's not always the case. So we wanted to create something that allows to tell an in-depth story of the artwork without creating extra work. So once again, those are automatically generated. You go and you click the button like I did. You go and you print it, you cut the QR code, you put it next to your artwork. Comes time to an exhibition, the art lover comes, scan this, and then get to see the full detail. They can see the picture of Grant painting, creating the painting. They learn the whole story. They can see the provenance event. Everything is shared with them in a very engaging way. And it's very, very easy to use. So just to recap, a few things that's done automatically for you. Your CV is automatically updated when you create the artwork record and update it. Your blockchain registration is done automatically. The QR codes are generating automatically, and the artwork records, the certificates are creating automatically. So these are some of the initiatives that we've done to try to reduce the administration, especially on when it comes to presenting your work as an artist. And then lastly, so one of the things I want to mention, and I know Marcia, I don't know if this is fully ready or not, but I'm excited. I'm going to share it anyway. So at the bottom here, you have the ability to import work. So if you're a member of Copyright Visual Art, and then part of their image bank, you have you're a member here, and I'll just go and type Patty because I know he's here and he's got some work. I search, and then all of your work are appearing. You simply have to click. When you press, when you select import selected, all the information, all the metadata, the images, and all that is going to be automatically transported on Imprimo. So if you're part of Copyright Visual Arts and you're part of the image bank, you could reduce your work from hours, many hours by using this. If you're not part of that image bank, you probably should. Marcia can tell you a little bit more about this, but if you're a member of it, I highly encourage that you do this. You're going to save yourself a ton of time.